At the age of 9, a teacher in front of the whole class pointed to me and said, "That's the boy with the broken brain."
In today's episode, I sit down with world-renowned brain and memory expert Jim Kwik to discuss everything from the negative effects of social media usage on your brain, neuro-nutrition, decision fatigue, and stress management. Let's dive in now. In season 1 of Becoming Unstoppable, I packed up my life and went on a 90-day mission to biohack my way back to health. I used the latest wearable tech to alleviate stress, took lab tests to uncover nutritional deficiencies that mimic psychological disorders, tested nootropics to improve brain function, and more. In Season 2, we dive deeper into the field of biohacking. You'll hear from world-renowned biohacker Dave Asprey, author of Fats for Fuel Dr. Joseph McCullough, brain and memory expert Jim Kwik, and more. Join us for Season 2 now so you can become unstoppable in your own life. Continuing my journey after the release of my best-selling book Unstoppable, I attended the Upgrade Labs Biohacking Conference in Beverly Hills. I was lucky enough to interview brain and memory expert Jim Kwik. Jim has shared his knowledge with the likes of Elon Musk, Jim Carrey, Bill Clinton, Oprah Winfrey, and the cast of the X-Men Days of Future Past. And today, he's going to share that knowledge with you.
So when I'm speaking on stages, people will see me do these memory demonstrations where maybe I'll have 100 people stand up and introduce themselves to the audience, and I'll memorize all their names or 100 words or 100 numbers, and I'll recall them forwards and backwards. But I always tell people afterwards, I don't do this to impress you, I do this to express to you what's really possible. Because the truth is, every single person here that's listening can do that and a lot more. We just weren't taught. And I know that because I grew up with learning difficulties that stemmed from an accident I had when I was 5 years old. I had head trauma, traumatic brain injury, and after that my parents said I was never the same. You know, I had teachers would repeat themselves all through schools 4, 5, 6 times. I would pretend to understand, but I didn't really understand. I had very poor focus, a very poor memory. It took me an extra few years so longer to learn how to just read. At the age of 9, a teacher in front of the whole class pointed to me and said, "That's the boy with the broken brain." And adults have to be very careful with their external words because they become a student, like a child's internal words. So I noticed every single time I did bad on a test or I wasn't picked for a sports team, I would always say, "Oh, it's because I have the broken brain." And that became my identity. When I was 18, I hit a wall. I ended up in the hospital because I couldn't keep up with my freshman studies, and I was sacrificing sleep and eating and working out, all the things that we know are good for you. I was just living in the library, and I ended up passing out one night, and I fell down a flight of stairs. I hit my head again, and I woke up in the hospital 2 days later, and that's where I just realized I was just wasting away. It was the darkest period in my life. I thought I died. Maybe part of me, wished I did to get out of that pain. And I was hooked up to all these IVs, and when I said there has to be a better way, the nurse came in with a mug of tea, and on it was a genius. It was Albert Einstein, and it had this quote that said, "The same level of thinking that's created your problem won't solve your problem." And it made me ask a new question, like, why? What's my problem? I'm a very slow learner. How do I think differently about it? Maybe I can learn how to learn. And I put all my studies aside, and I just started studying learning. I wanted to solve this riddle, that's this puzzle, like how does my brain work so I can work my brain? Like how does my memory and my focus work so I can work my memory and focus? And I study adult learning theory, multiple intelligence theory, mnemonics, like what did the ancients do before they had digital devices and printing presses to remember things? And very quickly my grades shot up, and my life did too. But the reason I'm doing this still, 20 plus years later, is one of my students I was tutoring, she read 30 books in 30 days. Can you imagine 30 books, just digesting them and understanding them? And I wanted to find out not how, but why. And I found out her mother was dying of terminal cancer and was only given 2 months, 6 days to live. And the books she was reading were books on health and wellness to save her life. And she ended up doing so. And at that moment, I realized that if knowledge is power, learning is your superpower, and it's a superpower for all of us. So there's no magic memory pill, but there's a process. We know that, for instance, memory, and I start with memory because there is no learning without memory. Socrates said that. And the challenge is a lot of times we'll learn something at a podcast or a video or a book or a conference, and then 2 days later there's a forgetting curve, and 80% of it is gone. That's what the forgetting curve says. And so memory is so important, but we know from the latest research, there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's just a trained memory and an untrained memory. We either learned it, but school, they teach you 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic. But what about recall, retention, remembering, right? And so we know 1/3 of it is predetermined by genetics and biology, but 2/3 is completely in our control, and that's our lifestyle. And so when I'm training somebody in memory or focus or speed reading, half of it is in talking about the hardware. If your brain is a supercomputer, this is the hardware, and then the other part of it is the software. How to learn a language, how to remember names, how to change your habits. And so, the hardware is about good diet, because you are what you eat. It's about getting rid of negative thoughts. It's about protecting your brain. It's about exercise. It's about stress management, right? But then here is the processes, because I believe genius leaves clues, that if you meet somebody and they're great at remembering people's names, they're doing something other people aren't doing. And so my work is about deconstructing those strategies of genius, if you will, so that anyone can do it regardless of their age, their background, their career, their education level, financial situation, gender. Good brain diet is a good place to start, because what you eat matters, especially if you're a great matter, if you will. So we know the genius foods, if you will, and then like neuro-nutrition. Avocados are good for your brain, and blueberries are good for your brain. Broccoli and olive oil and eggs and your wild fish. It's all good. The other thing I would do with a person is sleep is a big issue for a lot of people, and it can lead to a lot of brain fog and a lot of lack of energy, mental energy. A lot of people they suffer from a decision fatigue. You know what I mean? Like they're looking at a menu, they can't even decide on what they want to eat because they've used up all that cognitive energy. And so sleep is very restorative, but most people don't prioritize sleep. But I think it's like the number one brain hack, if you will. Another one is stress management. Something that gets me to the next level is just what are people doing to cope with stress, especially chronic stress. That when you're in chronic stress, it shrinks your brain and puts you in fight or flight. So it's good if you need to do something physical, but not good if you need to remember someone's name, if you need to remember the talk you have to give at your next business meeting or something like that. And so meditation goes a long way for me. Mindfulness meditation. So I meditate every day, twice a day, for 15 to 20 minutes a day. And for me, that's a way that I can just disconnect to reconnect. For that. And so there's so many different brain nutrients is a big deal for a lot of people. So if they're suffering from mental fog or fatigue, part of it is going to a functional medicine doctor and just getting panels done, in terms of nutrient profiles, because you could be deficient in certain critical vitamins or minerals that affect your brain performance also as well. Another thing is people don't think about this, is a positive peer group, because a lot of people are just tired because they're around people that drain their energy. A positive peer group are people that uplift you, that challenge you, that have kindness. But you could have a couple people in your life, and maybe these are people who are close to you, and they don't understand, and they can be sincere. Right? They don't want you to get hurt with something, or they don't understand why you're doing this, but maybe they don't want to lose you because you're growing or whatever it is, because you're studying all the time. And people could be sincere, but they can be sincerely wrong also. And so I think it's not just our neurological networks, it's our social networks. Studies in self-compassion show that kindness is actually getting better results than judgment. Meaning that if people are blaming themselves, or they're procrastinating, if they're doing something they know they shouldn't be doing, or they have shame that they're trying to hide, which takes a lot of energy also as well, that when you're kind to yourself, you're more likely to be nurtured and follow through with the things you need to be able to do. Because I think a lot of our energy gets dissipated or wasted in areas that don't serve us. The other thing is, we've heard this before, but self-love and self-care is not selfish. And people have to fall, relationships are wonderful, but our relationship to ourselves has to be the priority. And I do believe that people have to learn or relearn to fall in love with the person in the mirror who's been through so much, but is still standing. And what do? The actions are pretty much like anyone else you would love. You would do similar things, but for yourself. People should love themselves so fiercely that they show people around them how to do it. You know what I mean? And so I would say that goes a long way. I would also say that besides self-love and self-care, is breaking things into tiny habits is so important, because a lot of people feel overloaded and overwhelmed, and they feel burnt out, not because they're doing too much, because they're doing too little of the things that light them up. You know what I mean? That make them feel alive. Or even if they have things that they have to do, they make this so big that they don't chunk down to something that's very doable, like into these tiny little habits, if you will. Like, or actually flossing. Flossing is good for longevity, and people they know that, but a lot of people don't floss. And so you don't try to say, oh, I'm gonna floss one tooth. Just floss one tooth, and nobody's gonna stop there. Like, reading, we know, is great exercise for your mind, but most people don't do that, and they think like, oh, it's so difficult, but it's actually not. You know, we challenge people, thousands of people in our community, they read one book a week, and you think it's a lot, but if you look at it, the average book has about 64,000 words, and the average person reads about 200 words a minute. That means a book takes about 320 minutes to get through a book. Divide by 7, that's 7 days in a week, takes about 45 minutes a day. 45 minutes of reading a day will get you through one book a week, 52 books a year. And that person has such a big advantage over somebody who's the average person reading 1 or 2 books a week, right? In whatever they're reading. But my point is, break it down into manageable chunks, because a lot of people, and prioritize your mental health, because it's the most important thing. It's not just about mental intelligence. Facts, I could teach people all day long, facts, figures, foreign languages, formulas, how to do that quickly. It's not just mental intelligence, it's mental health and mental fitness. You know, my goal is to get people more mentally fit, like they do with their bodies. I mean, because it'll serve them in a big way. So here are the 4 things that are attacking our mental health. It's all driven by the digital age. Previous generations did not have this. Number 1, digital overload. Too much information, too little time. It's coming at us like we're drowning in information. It's like taking a sip of water out of a fire hose. So how is it affecting our mental health? It creates information anxiety, higher blood pressure, compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness. I mean, it is insane. And so that's one challenge, digital overload. Second, digital distraction. We live in a world full of app notifications, social media alerts, and so they're saying our attention span is less than a goldfish, and that's not good for our mental health if we're just multitasking and thinking of things all over the place. We can't maintain concentration and deep work. Besides digital overload and digital distractions, digital dementia. This is where we're so dependent on our smart devices, and it's kind of like, because we don't have to do the work, like think about it, keeps all this stuff, then our brains are getting weaker. You know, so it's atrophying. It's like our brain. If I put my arm in a sling for 6 months, it wouldn't grow stronger. It wouldn't even stay the same. It would grow weaker. But a lot of people are relying too much on their smart devices and their brain. Like, think about how many phone numbers you knew growing up. Like, all of them. But how many phone numbers do you know now? Like 1 or 2. So it's not that I want to memorize 300 phone numbers, but we've lost the ability just to remember 1 phone number or 1 conversation or where we parked the car. Right, or something that we just read. So that's digital dementia. They found that actually by GPS, that they realized if you're waiting for a piece of technology to tell you when and where to turn, you wouldn't realize when you would normally have a memory lapse, so you're not going to doctors to get checked out. So digital overload, digital distraction, digital dementia, and here's the big one, digital depression. All right, so when we're talking about mental health, when people pick up their phone and all day they're just scrolling through, and the challenge is comparison. Right? You're not going to feel really good with yourself when you see everyone else's life filtered, highly curated highlight trailer of their life, and you feel like you're not enough. Because I feel like the underlying cause of a lot of biggest challenges we have when it comes to self-esteem is that me growing up with a broken brain is I'm not enough. Right? And if you're not enough, you're not going to be loved, and then you're not going to be taken care of. Like, granted, with technology, it's a double-edged sword. It's like fire, right? Fire could heat your food or it could burn down your house. My biggest pet peeve when it comes to technology is when people pick it up out of boredom and habit, because they're programmed to do so with every dopamine flood that they're getting from every like, share, comment, cat video. And so the challenge is, if your technology is a tool for us to use, but if the technology is using us, then who becomes the tool?
So, what was your biggest takeaway from episode number 2? Comment below, and if you'd love to become unstoppable in your own life, head over to areyouunstoppable.com to take our success identity type quiz so you can get personalized recommendations for increasing your energy, decreasing fatigue, and performing at your best. In the meantime, be sure to grab a copy of my brand new book Unstoppable, share, like, and subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you for next week's episode.